The Atlanta Braves are ready to crank things up for the 2024 season, and we are back for yet another edition of BPTV as we get you set for what could be a very special summer, very special fall if the Braves have their way. As we heard from day one of spring training, World Series or bust. That's where the Braves have set their sights, and we're going to go on this journey together and find out just how far they can go when it comes to October. A lot of things that are going to happen between now and then. Grant McCauley and Chris Willis back with you as always. Lots to get into on this episode of the show as we get 2024. Not so much previewed as we're going to get this thing started. Braves and Phillies going to be in action starting this weekend. Go ahead and leave us a like on this video, though, before we get started. Hit that subscribe button and turn on those alerts so you get a notification every time we drop a new episode of the show. Chris, the Braves and the Phillies, they don't need to be reintroduced so much. They know each other all too well from their battles in the National League East and, of course, the last couple of Octobers. I don't want to put too much on one series of the season, literally dozens of series to follow. 3 games out of 162 by the time this weekend plays out, but it does feel like a chance to at least set the tone for the season, does it not?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's a lot of hype for a opening weekend series, I think, just because of the playoff history between these two teams the last 2 seasons. But again, you don't want to put too much stock into it, whether it goes great this weekend or it goes bad. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of excitement, and I expect that crowd at Citizen Bank's Park to be nuts again.
Yeah, I would expect that. That's kind of part and parcel for Philadelphia sports fans. They are rabid. They've got a team that has really taken it to the Braves the last couple of years, but this is a new campaign, and these teams, I would expect, will be battling it out all summer long to see who the best in the East is. Still think the Braves had the advantage there, but when it comes to October, as we found out very quickly and had to be reminded a couple of times, actually, the playing field can change drastically and dramatically. But we're not here for a playoff preview just yet. We are here to get this season started. And to do so, the Braves are going to turn to Major League strikeout king Spencer Strider on opening day. He's going to get that nod to be followed by Max Fried and Chris Sale. With everything that Strider has accomplished his first couple of years in the big leagues, this is a fitting choice, a well-earned honor, and one that's not lost on Strider, who looked at the staff that Atlanta has and thinks, a lot of guys could have made this start, but let's hear from the man who's going to do it. Here's Spencer Strider.
Skipper came and told me, we obviously have a plethora of guys that are deserving of this. I think that's certainly makes it an honor for me. But I think if you ask anybody, we're all sort of focused on winning every game we play on each day, and how that will get us to where we want to be in October. If somehow beating the Phillies in game 1 of the season could atone for losing to them in the DS, then that would be true. But as we all know, that doesn't work that way. So every game is important.
Yeah, I just had to ask Spencer Strider if that's just noise and narrative that comes with playing the Phillies, irony, coincidence, whatever you want to call it, coming right out of the gate, having lost to them in the previous October. But as we know, that page has been turned. This is not just a new chapter. This is a new book for the Atlanta Braves, and they want to write a story with an end that befits how good this club is. And Chris, when it comes to Spencer Strider and all of the things that he has accomplished his first couple of years, we could be talking about the first of many opening day assignments for this guy who seems poised for an even bigger 2024, if that's possible.
No doubt. I mean, it almost feels like it's a little bit of a changing of the guard at the top of the rotation with the uncertainty around Max Fried's contract, beyond this season. But I really do think that Strider's, he's growing into that role as the top of the rotation guy. He's not just the Braves' one of the Braves' best starters. I mean, he's one of the best starters in the majors now. And, we saw him come to spring even better, working on a curveball, adding to his repertoire. He had a really strong spring. I think this could be a Cy Young season for him. And I think, this is where he just establishes himself more as one of the top arms in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and who did the Braves turn to front their postseason rotation? That's not a knock on Max Fried, nor is giving Spencer Strider this assignment. I think it's simply validation for just how important and just how good Spencer Strider is to be at the top of a very talented rotation that includes some guys who have made some opening day starts in their careers, some guys who have finished pretty high in the Cy Young voting themselves, some strikeout titles between some of these gentlemen in this rotation. It's a pretty good one. Max Fried should line up for the home opener, assuming the Braves go with their plan to throw all 5 starters on the road trip to Philadelphia, then Chicago. That would mean Spencer Strider would start the final game in that second 3-game series and line up Fried for that opening day start at home, I should say, the home opener, which I think is a nice honor for Max in what could be his final year with the Braves. But we'll stick a pin in that discussion and maybe have it at another time. Chris Sale, though, is going to throw in Philadelphia. Having Charlie Morton ultimately between Fried and Sale feels like something the Braves might want to get to as the season wears on. But of course, adjustments can be made after this first series and throughout the season. We've seen the Braves make a lot of adjustments in their starting rotation, but they obviously want to have Sale go against the lefty prowess that the Phillies have in that starting lineup. Chris, I think that's a pretty good call.
Yeah, without a doubt. I like it. Sale, obviously we talked to him right after the trade happened, and he was ready to go then. So
Yeah.
I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to get out there as quickly as he can. And what better place to drop him in, because if these two teams meet in the postseason, whether it's in the division series or league championship series, Chris Sale's probably going to play a pivotal part, against this lineup that's got a ton of good left-handed hitters.
Yeah, and none, I think, bigger, obviously, than Bryce Harper. And if you can neutralize that guy, you have a pretty good chance of neutralizing the Phillies on a given day. Kyle Schwarber also, I think, has a few things to say when it comes to the long ball. That's a pretty good hitting club, and the Braves have found that out. And I think getting Chris Sale is no coincidence to get another high-powered left-handed starter that could be a weapon against this particular club, among others. Now, the Braves and Phillies rained out on Thursday are making the decision to postpone and push the weekend and have a Friday opening day rather than that Thursday start. And that's made possible by the virtue of having that extra day of rest, that immediate off day in the season that a lot of us poke fun at. But at this point, it's kind of important that it was there so that the Braves and Phillies can have their 3 games and get them all in. Hopefully, weather permitting, the weekend should be much nicer. Now, getting to opening day, of course, the Braves had to make some interesting moves as they pared down to 26 men. Some questions were answered, and I'm going to get to a return for the Braves, yet another one here that we'll be talking about here, a familiar face that's back. But Reynaldo Lopez was named the 5th starter for now. Bryce Elder, of course, optioned to AAA, where he will start the season, something we discussed last time on the show. Chris, I'm kind of curious what your confidence level is in Lopez, who has not made regular starts since way back in 2021 when he moved to the bullpen and had quite a bit of success, and it seemed like maybe that was what he was brought to Atlanta to do.
I wasn't crazy about the idea to start with, but after watching him in the spring, I'm at least intrigued now to see how it turns out. I think there was no better time to do this. If you wanted to do this, then you needed to do it coming out of spring training, where you could get him stretched out easily. Because once he goes in the bullpen, if he goes in the bullpen, it would be really hard to get him stretched out again. I still think he can be a dynamic weapon in the bullpen come the postseason. But I think he's grown as a pitcher over his time, over the last few years that he spent time as a reliever. Let's see what he's got and go on with it. And then, you're taking advantage of the depth that you have with Bryce Elder having options and some of the other guys they've got to go ahead. So I'm intrigued. I think he's going to start the 5th game of the season against the White Sox. So
Go figure.
Club. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it will. And I do think that there is something to be said for it. No, he did not have a ton of success as a starting pitcher, moved to the bullpen, found that success there, but that's still success at the big league level. And maybe some of that is translatable to, new city, change of scenery, a club that feels like, okay, well, now having had a run where you feel like you are, maybe exactly what you need to be, getting a little bit more out of him and trying him as a starting pitcher again. I think you're right. And the time to do it is in the spring when you have all of that time to stretch him out and get him ready. You can always put him back in the bullpen. And come October, as you mentioned, not too many clubs are using their 5th starter at that point, and Lopez could be quite the weapon for the Braves. The high-octane arm, of course, he's got. We'll see how he's able to fare here. Now, the pitching staff also got a familiar face back in the bullpen. Jesse Chavez back. I had to count this, and multiple stints in the same season in 2022 was part of it. This is round 6, if I counted this right, for Jesse Chavez and the Braves. But the final round of a 17-year career, the 40-year-old veteran mentioned as he rejoined the Braves. This will be the final campaign, and he's happy to be back in Atlanta. He told reporters about his return this spring after spending the time with the Chicago White Sox and getting a chance to find a new opportunity elsewhere when he found out he's not in Chicago's plans. Here's what Jesse Chavez had to say about returning to the Braves and how much it means to him.
Words can't express how I feel right now. I mean, there's so many emotions going on with how I feel about Braves country that it's really tough. It dates back to the group I had in 2010 when I was a young pup. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that group. Watching Bobby Cox's last year and being able to see that, listen to him, watch how he went about his business, watch how everybody else went about their business. That's where it started. And I'll forever be grateful for that team, because what I learned that year I don't think I'm around till today, or even I'd say 4 or 5 years after that. So I'd say that starts where this place holds a dear spot in my heart. And then the last 3 years of what we've done, what we've accomplished.
Chris, I think some things just feel inevitable, and Chavez back with the Braves, that's just one of those things.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's impossible not to pull for a guy like Jesse Chavez coming back. Didn't have a great spring with the White Sox, but he's had that knack of coming to Atlanta and pitching really well. So it's not surprising to see him go back and give him another shot. And then what's going to be his final year in the majors. So, I mean, again, you just got to pull for that guy because he just keeps doing his job. He was doing a great job last year, having a great season when he got hit in the leg with a liner off Miguel Cabrera's bat. So, unfortunate end. So I'm glad that's not where the book closed on Jesse Chavez in Atlanta.
Yeah, his time in Chicago, if you look at those spring training numbers, I mean, they didn't look good at first blush. Then I kind of did some more digging and found out that the White Sox, for whatever reason, decided in his first outing of the spring to just let Jesse Chavez absolutely wear it as though it was late August and they were running out of bullpen options. I don't know what that was about, but Jesse was able to throw several good outings after the initial bad one. And just not in the White Sox plans, but the Braves plans, they changed a couple of times over the course of the spring when a familiar face was available. We saw it with Adam Duvall and what he brings to this club. Jesse Chavez, different variety, but also adds a lot to that clubhouse dynamic and has been a big part of the winning, as he pointed out, that the Braves have done the last few years. And Jackson Stevens lost his spot in the bullpen as a result of this. He was outrighted off the roster to Gwinnett, but elected free agency where he could catch on elsewhere. But Chris, I don't know that I would be surprised to see the Braves make an effort to retain him at the minor league level on standby if he's not snatched up in short order by some other team that's pitching needy right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an opportunity for him to look around and see if he can get a major league deal somewhere. And and again, if he's not able to do that, I would not be shocked to hear the news that he's re-signed and going to Gwinnett because, at some point during this season, you could see him back up in the major leagues at some, when he's needed.
Yeah, and the Braves certainly like Jackson Stevens. He had a very nice spring. I think he had himself set up, but as we know, the 25th, 26th man, depending on how you look at the last spot on the bench or the last arm in the bullpen, those are always going to be questions clubs are asking this time of year. And we found out that Jesse Chavez was the answer to one of those anyway. In that bullpen, Atlanta stacked with lefties. We knew A.J. Minter and Aaron Bummer were going to be in place, but now it appears healthy springs for Tyler Matzik and Dylan Lee, and they should be able to see action immediately as well this season. From the right side, Raisel Iglesias, Joe Jimenez, Pierce Johnson, and now Jesse Chavez looks to be that group. Fangraphs rates this as one of the top bullpens in the game, and that is without Reynaldo Lopez in this mix. Safe to say this is the kind of group that every club out there would like to have backing up a rotation, Chris.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I really like the moves that they made in the bullpen, getting some more lefties down there. Last 23 bullpen was good, but there wasn't a lot of flexibility with it. Just getting Tyler Matzik back healthy and Dylan Lee as well, because people forget how good Dylan Lee was at the start of last season before the shoulder injury. So I just think there's a lot of flexibility down there, a lot of versatility, a lot of guys that can pitch in a lot of different situations. And it's going to be fun to kind of see how they how Brian Snitker deploys all of them. And and again, it's a deep group.
It will be. And we now have a clear picture of all of Atlanta's reserves, including that bench. Travis d'Arnaud, obviously sharing time with Sean Murphy behind the plate. Luis Guillorme is going to be the utility infielder. Adam Duvall rejoining the club on his one-year deal. And Forrest Wall, this is another great story as he made the club and was told that he'll be heading north to open the season after what was a good 2023, a very nice spring, and a well-deserved honor for a kind of a well-traveled veteran minor leaguer who finally broke through with the Braves and will be getting this opportunity. And lest I not mention it, Marcell Ozuna, backup first baseman, is also available. He's played a little outfield, but we'll see most of his time at DH. Atlanta sent out David Fletcher, Eli White, and Luke Williams among the others who were vying for backup spots. They also released Jordan Luplow, who's actually with the Phillies and going to be on the minor league side with them. We know the Braves have a lot of guys that play every day, so the bench is not quite the necessity it was, pre-DH especially. The depth does appear to be there in AAA, though, Chris, if Atlanta needs to call upon some extra help at some point. We know at some point that's going to happen, to say nothing of the last-minute shopping they did to make themselves a little bit stronger on the bench than they were on day one of spring training.
Yeah, I think Adam bringing in Adam Duvall made just changed the whole complexity of the bench.
Yeah.
You can afford to bring Forrest Wall in as a pinch runner, a defensive outfielder. He's another great story, as you mentioned, the guy that's just persevered over a long minor league career to finally land on an opening day roster. And then Luis Gourmet struggled with the injury a little bit to start the spring, but he came on at the end and provide some versatility too. So I think it's a pretty good looking bench at this point. It was really getting Duvall though was just a huge pickup for that bench as as a platoon outfielder, but also as a right-handed bat that can come off the bench late in the game and pinch hit. So the Braves don't use the bench too much, as you've mentioned, but at the same time, it's good to have options there.
Yeah, and when you think about what happened last season with Michael Harris missing some time, I know Adam Duvall played some center field for the Braves. It's probably not where he's going to be the majority of the time if a team's deploying him. Typically, I think he'd be on a corner, but he's got that experience. He can play all three outfield spots, and now you have an insurance policy that just wasn't available amongst the options that you had when spring training started. And that's not taking anything away from Forrest Wall, who, as you mentioned, is a nice speed option off the bench and also can play in all three outfield spots if you need to. Speaking of the outfield, there's one more thing I want to cover before we wrap this thing up, and opening day is upon us on Friday. Ronald Acuna Jr. We have talked all about the numbers and the talent and everything that he brings to this team, but I love the insight that he gave us on his life this week, his career, his motivations, all of those things in an article for the Players Tribune. He really pulled back the curtain and shared a lot about his family, his passion for the game, his dedication to winning, the hardships of going through his knee injury, and his love for the Atlanta Braves. Chris, I really enjoyed reading this, and this is just not something that you see too often where a superstar just kind of opens it up and tells his story in this way. And to have Ronald Acuna Jr. do it, I thought was kind of something special for fans to really get an inside look at the man, not just the player.
Without a doubt. I mean, for him to lay it bare the way he did, it's just such a great read. If you haven't read it, you need to go check it out. I read it a couple of times today,
Yeah.
and it was just kind of heartwarming to see where he came from, the dreams that he had and how he realized them, by making it to the major leagues. I think I think it would give a lot of people have this impression of Ronald as being, a cocky, young, at times arrogant star. But I mean, reading this piece, I think you'll come away with a completely different view of him and how he what really got me was how he admitted, he had made mistakes in the past, and then, he's grown from them and tried to grow and take care of, not make the same mistakes twice.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a great read, and if you haven't seen it, you need to check it out.
Oh, you absolutely do. And I think that some of the insights that he shared from being a small kid who was having to make his own baseballs out of newspaper and tape to a kid that was kind of frustrated on whether some team was finally going to call him back and sign him. I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but it is quite the ride through the life and career of Ronald Acuna Jr. And if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. There's a link to it on my X, or you can go to the man himself. Ronald Acuna Jr.'s got it all over his social media, but be sure you check it out. It's his story from the Players Tribune this week. And with that said, that's going to bring us to the end of our story in this episode of BPTV. As always, hit that subscribe button right here on the Battery Power channel. Turn on those notifications. You'll get an alert every time we drop a new episode. Thanks again for riding along with us, and we'll catch you next time when the 2024 season is finally underway. Until then, for Chris Willis, I'm Grant McCauley. So long, Braves country.